Hey guys, this is Michael Allen here with the Contend Podcast, and in studio I have today as co-hosts Graham Foster, and also an honor and privilege to have Nina Landis with us. Her and her husband are here in town, and so I just wanted to snag the opportunity to get to interview her for a little bit, and I'm excited for you guys to get to hear some of her story. And Graham, I know you've known the Landis family for years. I don't know if maybe you can just give Nina a brief introduction.
Yes. How do you want me to introduce you?
Only say the good stuff.
Okay. Yeah, Nina and her husband Ryan have been good friends, very good friends for a number of years now, and lovers of the state of California, which is where I met her. Mm-hmm. My wife met her in Kansas City, and I guess together with their 4 children, they have been running hard after the Lord and just being some of the most authentic worshipers that I know. So, yeah, I think that's a good introduction.
Yeah. No, that's great. Nina, can you actually share me a little bit more about yourself, about your family?
Sure. This is my second podcast ever. So I had that question on the last podcast and I got all flustered because I'm like, what do you actually say about yourself when somebody asks that question? Like, what is the most important thing? And the reality is probably the most important thing about me is that I'm madly in love with Jesus and that he loves me a lot. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And everything that we do and everything that we are stems from that reality. And so we do a lot of things and we've done a lot of things. We've been a lot of places. But at the end of the day, probably the most important thing about us is that truth.
Yeah.
So I'm also a wife and I'm a mama to 7. I have 4 babies with me and 3 in heaven. And just another reason to look forward to that day that we're with him face to face and we get to see our babies. And we've been in full-time ministry for over 20 years.
Wow.
And I have lived all over the United States and spent some time in Australia and England and Africa. So
that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's a lot of traveling for a big family.
Yeah, well, the kids haven't been to all those places with us. They've been to Australia with us twice, though.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Can you maybe share a little bit what you guys are doing right now?
Yes. So we have a ministry called the Missional Nomads. And it is exactly what it sounds like. So a couple of years ago, we were traveling full-time for ministry. We'd been itinerating primarily. That's a term that some people are familiar with and some people aren't. It basically just means that for our occupation, we travel full-time to minister to different churches or conferences or as worship leaders or pastors or teachers. And so we were doing that full-time. And we were going from church to church and place to place where we have relationship with all these people. And we found every place we went, we'd be in a back room or around a dinner table. And we'd end up, these pastors and leaders would just end up pouring their guts out to us. And then we'd have to get on an airplane and fly out the next day. And it was awful. So everything in me was like, there's got to be another way to do this.
Yeah.
But I'm a mama first, And so the reality is that my first ministry is to my family. And so I had to figure out what that would look like for my kids and just the desire of wanting to be able to give more of our time and energy to pastors and leaders across the nation that are pouring their guts out faithfully year after year, and some of them in tiny congregations, and just faithful. And they need reinforcements. They need an Aaron and Hur to help hold their arms up. Yeah. They need just strength for a season. Sometimes they just need a date night.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we started exploring what that would look like. And, as things go with the Lord, sort of one thing led to another. And we bought a 5th wheel and we gutted it and renovated it and turned it into our home so that we could have our home with us. So my kids could have a constant in the middle of change. And so that would allow us to spend an extended period of time with pastors and leaders across the nation and really serve them and say, what do you need and how can we help? And
that's so cool.
so that's what we do. And we are currently not living in the fifth wheel. But that is still what we do.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. And I know for someone who works right now full time in ministry, it's just cool to see what it looks like to do that in the context of family, because especially what you guys are doing, that's rare. You don't really hear of that much, that much traveling with kids, but also that, especially that intentionality, like, our first ministry is first and foremost to our family. You're a mom, your husband's a dad first and foremost before like, hey, even though you do have such a passion to like to pour into pastors, to leaders, to travel around and do that, like you're doing the both and with the right priorities. And like you said, to start like loving Jesus fully all the way, so it's cool even just, I think, getting an opportunity for our listeners to even hear and like, get a little bit of a snapshot into your own life. I'm like, what does that look like to do that with family?
It's messy.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's important to say out loud.
100%.
There is nothing not messy about it. You're pastoring your children's hearts through a lot of pressure and a lot of change. And if you're going to do it well, it's going to be messy. And you got to just like acknowledge the mess and acknowledge the hard. And I can't even tell you how many times that I've sat with my kids and we've just cried together. Like, yes, this is very hard. Let's just have a good cry.
You're on the bed of the fifth wheel.
Totally. On the bunk bed, trying not to hit my head.
Yes. Oh, gosh. Well, I would love to hear a little bit more about that. Like, what kind of catapulted you? I know you mentioned like you were already kind of doing a little bit of the itinerant ministry and stuff like that, and then you saw be a need to do more. But maybe you could share just a little bit of your story of that kind of first step, and even just your history of obedience and the following steps. Especially when you didn't know what the next step looked like, or what was to come in the future, because. For anyone, it's a faith journey, walking and following the Lord in obedience, but with a family in particular, and doing what you guys do, like you said, it's messy, it's not easy. And so maybe can you share maybe what the first steps look like and what have been maybe some kind of high points along your way of this now 20 years of doing this,
It's interesting. When we actually launched Missional Nomads, I said to Ryan, I feel like this ministry is like this sort of culmination of all of these stepping stones that have led us to this moment. Like everything we've been through, everything we've experienced, the stages we've stood on, the hidden rooms where we've prayed our guts out, like everything has sort of led us to this place where there can be like a real tenderness in our hearts for pastors and leaders, and a knowing of kind of what their reality looks like, the rigor of ministry, we were pastors for 7 years in the Bay Area at a church called Convergence HOP. And when we joined with them, it was Harvest House Church, and the Lord used us to help turn that ship into a house of prayer. And so we know what it's like to labor in sort of those faithful places of pastoral care. And then we also know what it's like to be ralliers and contenders and forerunners that are sent out to strike the mark over certain regions and cities and strategic moments. And then we also know what it's like to sit in a prayer room for 50 hours a week and deal with principalities and powers from the place of deep intercession. And so the combination of sort of all of those stepping stones is what led us into this, the ability to recognize a need or a deficit maybe in the body of Christ, where we have, especially pastors, I think they're really good at caring for other people. And they're so good at it that they suck at caring for themselves. And sometimes they suck at caring for their families. And that's just part of it. Like that's part of the wrestle. And so I believe that the Lord is really shifting that. But when God invited us into this sort of forerun concept of the Missional Nomads, I remember standing in the kitchen and looking at my husband and saying, I don't think a lot of people are going to say yes to this. because it's going to cost a lot. And we don't have to say yes. Like just saying like permission to not, like it's okay. And then, you know, even in the context of a marriage, I think it's important to like lay that out on the table. Like I had more vision for it than Ryan had. But at the end of the day, like we are one flesh. And so we're either in it together or we're out. Yeah. And so that was on the table. Like, this is what I feel like the Lord's saying. And how does this hit your heart? And how do you feel? And are you in or are you out? And I'll follow you. Like, and so, you know, he spent time fasting and praying and seeking the Lord and came back to me and said, I think we're supposed to do it. I think this is what we're supposed to do. And so we just started taking baby steps towards that. And there's been like 1,000,001 explosive moments where we're like, I think we missed God. We're going to die. So it's not without, it's like, you know, I think people get this concept about ministry and you get this like, like angelic visitation, divine moment. Like this is the direction you're supposed to go. Now everything's going to be like roses and butterflies. And it is like in all reality, the one thing that we've learned through this journey and over the last 20 years of ministry is that the Lord has one primary agenda, one, and it's the human heart. And he is going to get it. Mine, yours, Graham's, he's going to get it. And he's after it. And he's relentless in his pursuit. And so if we are really saying, God, we want you to have all of our hearts, like we want to pour our lives out to you like a drink offering. If we really mean that and we're really saying it, then like get ready because he is relentless. Yeah. And he hears you. He's the God who hears. And so this journey has been profoundly painful, honestly, in so many ways for us. It's cost a lot. It's been super hard. But it's also been sprinkled with holy moments where you see, oh my goodness, this is why. This is why, you know. And I was just sharing with Graham and Sarah the other day in their living room, because that's how we do. We just hang out. Usually there's chips involved.
All the snacks.
Good food, good drinks, you know, always. The kids are in bed. That's when we have our adult conversation. And we were talking and I said, you know, years ago, you know, you hear the phrases kind of in the church where I'll embrace the flame or I will face the wind. You know, have you ever heard those kind of phrases? And there's a Misty Edwards song with that in it. And you sing it, you know, in your youth, like, yes, like I'm going to embrace the flame. But in all actuality, when the flame comes or we experience that sort of opposition or the rigor of staying faithful to the Lord, we kind of flinch or we want to like run away from it, or it's kind of confusing, or sometimes we're offended if we're being honest. And
you're becoming familiar with the flame.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, what I was sharing with them the other night, like, and not wanting it to sound trite in any way, but I feel like for the first time in 20 years, the flame is sweet. Because I'm realizing how much of my heart he's getting that I don't know if I would have been able to give it if he hadn't have used the unique flame that he's used in this season. And so that makes me really excited because I really want him to have my whole heart. And I want to be able to give that to my kids, you know, just this is the way, walk in it, like embrace the flame.
That's so good.
And so that's where we are. And we've seen just in the last 9 months, we've done construction at camps, you know, we've sent friends on dates. We've done marriage counseling. We've done, you know, deep heart work in sort of with some really people struggling with depression. I mean, the Missional Nomads has looked a million different ways in all the places we've been, but it's really just about that like steady obedience and keeping your ear attentive and saying, I will go my way to the mountain of myrrh, to the hill of frankincense. And that's really, what does that look like for each individual heart? And yes, there's mountaintops and victory. Yeah. And yes, there are valleys and weeping. But at the end of the day, he is doing his job, and he's not going to stop until the work is complete.
Wow.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the name.
The Missional Nomads.
Yeah. Because, I mean, these are both just great words, right? Just our missional calling as Christians, right?
Yeah.
And then our sort of nomadic journeys, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the reality is, when we think missionary, we automatically think overseas. And then if you have any house of prayer training, then you also include intercessory missionaries in that equation. Not very many people, but some. And so for us, when the Lord started inviting us into this, we were realizing like this is a mission. Like God is sending us on a mission to pastors and leaders across the United States whose hearts need strength.
Yeah.
And so we're being sent by the Father out. And so that became something when we started exploring it. Okay, what does it look like to be sent when, you know, we're not necessarily working with any particular church? We have tons of history with different churches, and we have a covering. Bending the Bow International is our covering. And we said we want to be sent by the body of Christ to the body of Christ, which was a kind of a new concept. So when people think ministering to pastors and leaders, they don't necessarily think missional because they're already saved. But he prays that our faith would not fail. Yeah. And if Jesus prays that our faith would not fail, then we as brothers and sisters have to pray for each other that our faith would not fail. Yeah. And so that became the mission of what we were called to do. And then we moved into that nomadic, you know, we're obviously going to be traveling from place to place, and our home is literally on wheels. And so it is not stationary in any capacity. It even moves when it is stationary.
You fully embody it.
So that's kind of where the name came together, and we just went with it.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I'm curious, and I guess a little context, my first time meeting you guys was actually it was a Contend summer event, and you guys led worship during Contend that summer, and it was so powerful. I think it was probably one of my favorite moments of that entire, I think it was either 3 or 4 days that summer. And I think that was my main introduction to you and to your family, was just the heart of worship that you guys carry. And it's interesting that you said that when the first place that you guys helped pastor was called Convergence, the house of prayer I was a part of in college, that it's just originally called Lee Prayer. They actually changed the name to Convergence because they feel like, hey, there's an importance on prayer, worship, and missions, the convergence of those three. And that sounds like what you guys carry, like honestly, in your life, is that convergence of those three things, that missional call, while still you have that history in the prayer room, you have that DNA piece, you carry worship as worship leaders. And I don't know, can you maybe speak to that a little bit, just like that convergence of those three things and how you carry that as a family, what that looks like now, and even kind of the things that maybe you can share a little more specifically even on worship, like in this generation, when you think like worship leader, I know there's like a certain connotation, there's certain pictures that someone like might get, like, and that might not necessarily be what you guys are, but that does not diminish the calling and what you guys carry. So I don't know if you can maybe just elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. Well, as you know, my roots are in the house of prayer. And so worship and prayer, that's like a combination that was written into my DNA from the beginning, of just loving Jesus. My husband is Calvary Chapel roots. So he loves the word, and he is really rooted in it and has it written on his heart. And so those sort of two things came together really uniquely when we were joined in covenant. And then what does that look like? And I tend to be a little bit more like, where's the Holy Spirit? And he's like, where is it in the Bible? And we're a good balance.
Word and spirit. That's so good.
And so his love for the word has helped me fall more in love with the word. And my love for the Holy Spirit has helped him fall more in love with the Holy Spirit. So I think really, it's been these sort of stepping stones in our journey. And in the season that we were running with Lou and TheCall and doing, we did TheCall Berkeley and we did Azusa Now. And we were a part of several different 222 conferences and some Contend worship, summer, what do you call them?
Summer gatherings.
Summer gatherings.
Contend America.
Contend America gatherings. And so that part, Lou carries this fatherly covering around that sort of striking intercession and the kind that has vision for entire regions. We're not talking like I'm praying for this like little thing over here. Like you're going in and taking ground over entire regions in intercession. And so really, while the House of Prayer in Kansas City teaches you how to pray in a global way, it also, for me was more about devotion. It taught me simple devotion. It taught me how to sit and adore and fall in love with Jesus when no one is looking and there's no glory in it for you.
Yeah.
And so then when we began to run with Lou, it really stirred up sort of that warrior intercession and then just the faith and the vision for entire regions and shifting atmospheres. And so we know from the House of Prayer culture that sort of Mary of Bethany authority that preserves entire people groups with her worship and her prayer, right? And her adoration. And then with Lou, you have this like Nazarite striking, Elijah, and so when those two things come together, it's really unique because you have a rooting. It's really, in my opinion, it's John the Beloved. It's the one who says, I'm God's favorite and he loves me the most. And then he says, and I'm going to write the book of Revelation about trumpet sounding and judgment. And I'm the only one that can talk about those hard things because I've sat with a kind, loving God with my head against his chest. And so it's the combination of those two. And then what happens when you sit with God and you adore him and you let him permeate your heart is you get his heart for people.
Yeah.
And so that pastoral aspect of like caring about the body of Christ and caring about the lost and caring about what's happening in the earth sort of comes together. And then you go,
yeah, that's huge.
Okay, so you can't really have one without the other, And so what that looks like for our family, those all converging is, it's really practical. Like I always want to point people back to how practical loving God is because it's, we can etherealize it a little bit and if we do that, then we have no endurance because it's not always like that. And so if we don't learn how to abide through the rigor of real life and real circumstances and bills and sickness and
even the mundane,
all of it, you think about your covenant when you're getting married. I'm going to love you in sickness and health, in victory and defeat, through trial and through, it's just all of those things it's the same in our walk with the Lord. And so, with the kids, we worship together as a family. A big thing that we are doing in all of these regions that we're visiting is we're We're doing the Mary of Bethany thing. We're opening the heavens over the region and adoring God in the region, because we actually believe that our worship preserves the people in that region. And so as a family, we do it with great intention. And then we're praying and contending for God's heartbeat and desire for that region. And what is he doing? What are you doing, God? Where are you moving? What are you saying? How can we agree with you? We're stepping into that intercession piece. And then we're moving forward in the missional or pastoral piece of going, your boots are on the ground here, this pastor or leader. You've been sowing for the last 20 years in this region. Yeah. What is in your heart? What is God saying to you? What have you dreamed about? And how can we link arms with you and agree? And how can we practically serve you and strengthen you so that you can continue to run with endurance and with vision without fainting? And so it's really those three things kind of coming together.
That's so good.
Can I back up just a little bit? You said being with God, get with God, right? And then let him permeate you, right? How has that happened in your life? Because that's not an easy thing. It's not a quick thing, you know, knowing him. It's easier to go out and get the fruit nowadays. It's not easy to know him, to let him permeate you. Yeah. So is that something in your journey that you could share a little bit about, and how it's formed who you are as just a worshiper, as a mom, as a wife?
The first word that I think of when you're talking is the word dependent. I think like we can fall on the rock and be broken, or the rock can fall on us. And so in the last 20 years, I really do feel like by his grace, he's led me into that volunteering in the day of his power, that falling on the rock. Like I want to get there first. And I've learned that it's better that way. And so the discomfort doesn't change, you know. I don't know if you've ever fallen on a rock. It's not comfortable. And I think sometimes we have this idea of abiding with the Lord as being this really, you know, cozy, sort of comfortable snuggle. And it's not always that way. When you fall on a rock, you're confronted with things immediately. And so I'm not saying that I haven't had the rock fall on me, because I definitely have had that happen too. But I think in all the years of the house of prayer and running with Lou and pastoring in the Bay and serving in itinerant ministry all over the nation and internationally, what has come up over and over and over again is that it's not by might and it's not by power, but it's by his Spirit. And we literally cannot do anything apart from him. And if we do not learn how to make him the greatest treasure of our lives and the source and supply of every movement and action and breath and thought, then we are going to die. It's just, we're going to faint. We're going to fail. We're going to get crushed. And that's the reality. I mean, it's not a very fun reality to say out loud. I don't think a lot of people are saying it out loud. But he is so beautiful, and he is so kind, and he is so patient, and he is so good. And if we would trust him through the pain, then we will get the gold. But we have to trust him through the pain. And then we have to return to him in the pain. And so really, I feel like that permeating that I'm talking about is sitting in that discomfort and going, I still want you to have it all. I still know that there's more of you that I can discover, and there's more of you that I can uncover. And I just want to know you really, I do.
I know Spurgeon has a quote, I've learned to kiss the waves that have dashed me against the rock of ages. I love that picture, and it kind of sounds like, along with what you're sharing, it doesn't make it any more comfortable when you find yourself in that place of being like literally dashed against the rock, but the rock is there, and whatever that wave might be that's dashing you against him, like you have that place to stand. And even learning to be thankful, like, Lord, would normally say thank you for these circumstances because they're hard, but being able to see from that perspective, like I'm being almost forced to depend on him and have literally no other solid place to go but him in this moment. But that's where I need to be. That's where my family needs to be, and there's no way to really circumvent that sometimes. Of like, Graham used the analogy, sometimes you just, let me just go get the fruit. Like, no, actually that permeating, letting the Lord so fill you, but then also kind of continues that rock analogy, letting him so be the only thing that you're standing on.
Yes.
That all the other sand and other stuff, it's washed away, and it's just him that you're standing on. Yeah. And so to also kind of go back a little bit, backtrack just a tad bit, you're sharing so many good things. Just with regarding your experience with the call with Papa Lou. One of my mentors, he used this phrase. He said, hey, pack what you want to carry. And it was in regards to like a missions training school I was doing. And when you're sitting there for like a 7-month school, there's like a fire hydrant of information coming at you. And he's like, hey, at the end of the day, pack what you want to carry. Take, and intentionally digest, process, journal, share with others, and internalize like that which you really want to take with you.
Yeah.
For you, and even your own experience with the call over the years, your time with Papa Lou, what are those things? I know you kind of hinted at it already a little bit, but maybe if you can kind of unpack a bit more. What are those things that you and Ryan have intentionally, like, hey, these are the things we're going to pack and carry with us, maybe make a part of our family DNA? Again, kind of going back to that convergence, prayer, worship, and missions. What are those things that you have packed and carry and are continuing to carry with you guys now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the first thing I would say would make Papa Lou proud, and it is fasting.
Come on.
But again, with the discomfort of embracing the flame. I mean, fasting is really that sort of volunteering for discomfort. I mean, it's saying, okay, God, like, I want you to get what you want to get, and I want to pray what you want to pray, and I want to align myself with your heart so much that I'm willing to like push all these other comforts out of the way so that I can fully engage my heart with what you're doing in this moment right here, right now. Or that, or even making the deposits in the bank account, of fasting so that we can withdraw when we need a miracle, when we need power, when we need to see his hand. And so I feel like that probably first and foremost, I've never been more inspired and provoked by another human being in fasting than Papa Lou. Like it makes.
I'll say that.
It makes me like go. I could probably fast more. I could probably go a little bit farther. And so definitely that. Both my husband and I have really been impacted by that. In that arena. And then the other would be, what I hinted to earlier, and that is that sort of regional flashpoint, strike the mark, make a deposit, put a seed in the ground for a future moment that's going to carry fruit and breakthrough in it.
Come on.
And so that is very much, I think I was actually a little bit surprised with the Missional Nomads, and I shouldn't have been, because my whole life has led up to this point. But so much of what we're doing in every region that we go to is actually just worship and intercession and like fasting for these pastors and leaders. Like, we are going, oh, okay, so really the way this is going to shift is not, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to downplay other things, but what I am saying is that the power of fasting and prayer and intercession and worship in the regions that the Lord is taking us to feels so much more significant than I could have anticipated. And that taking the time to set up altars of worship and adoration and prayer in every region that we go to, I believe is what's preserving us along the journey. And then also that there are seeds being sown into the ground that will bear fruit in the future that we haven't even seen yet.
Yeah.
And so I have so much faith for that. And watching, probably over the last 15, 18 years, just boldly stand at those marker points and sow those seeds in the ground has been sort of that encouraging thing where you go, okay, we're doing it too. Like, okay, we're gonna like believe that that's what's shifting the atmosphere.
Come on.
That's good.
Yeah. I think just on that note, I don't know, it's a little sad, but I know, I mean, it's been, like you said, 20 years. I think Papa Lou's first gathering that he did was in 2000 on the mall in DC. Right. 20 years of continuing to do those types of gatherings and hearing after the fact so many people say, hey, my life was changed at TheCall, and kind of even hearing that snapshot from like you and Ryan and your own lives, how you got impacted by Papa Lou at TheCall Berkeley, these different significant moments and what you've taken from that and what you're continuing to run with even now. It's just so special. I'm glad our listeners kind of get a little bit of a glimpse into that, because I think it's Arthur Wallace that says this quote. So I might need to Google that later. But the quote is this: if you want to do something significant with your life, find what God is doing in a generation and throw yourself into it. And I feel like Papa Lou so embodies that. He's like, God, what are you doing in this generation? What are you doing in our nation, in America? And how can I be your instrument? How can I fully give myself to what you're doing now? And I think that's, if you're around Papa Lou, you get envisioned for that, right? You get envisioned to say like, oh, I want that with my life. And with fasting, with prayer. And I think what's so special, and just even hearing a bit more from your own life, how you have intentionally not just sought to, how can I burn bright in this generation, but how can I burn long? And your fuel of intimacy for that is so huge. And I think that's something that gets underplayed a lot is in the, especially in the charismatic movement. It's kind of like the big, the more, to use the word, charismatic, that's flashy, that's like kind of you gravitate towards that, but then you don't see, especially in the lives of men and women that we admire on the stage and we really respect, like, oh, I want to be like them. You don't always see the hidden life, you don't always know about that. And sometimes if they don't have it, then it is a very short and bright light. It's not necessarily long lived, but for you guys, 2 decades now that you've not only burned, but continued to burn brightly and run after Jesus. You're not jaded. You're not bitter, even though you've been through a lot of hard things. I just want to say, I so respect and I'm grateful for your example of intimacy with the Lord. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe you can even just share a bit more on that intimacy piece and how that has been a fuel for the flame, a fuel for the fire, so to speak, for both worship, prayer, and what you guys are doing.
It's hard for me to talk about that topic without crying, because I'm so passionate about it. And I'm so jealous for a generation to understand its value in a microwave culture. And the reward of it, I think, is also the thing that's underplayed, that when you're living unto another age, then it's way more rewarding to abide in the vine right now. But if you're living unto a moment, then you will lack endurance. And so even as a mother and for my children, we have a song that's called Legacy, and it's literally like my whole life I'm looking at all these moments of my journey, and I'm realizing that all of this was so that I had something to give you, so that you could take it and run. And then all of that will be something that you can give your children. And when you start getting a vision for another age, then all of the abiding and refining and the fellowshipping and the working out of our faith with fear and trembling, all of that becomes valuable and treasured and precious instead of inconvenient and annoying and delayed.
Yeah.
You know? And so then you start to, and really that's the shift is when you begin to go, okay, I'm not just flesh and bone. I'm spirit. And my spirit is going to live forever with God.
Yeah.
And so why in the world would I not be investing in the eternal part of my being?
Yeah.
And only be investing in the temporal part, the part that's going to fade. And so intimacy, really, you know, we throw that word around and outside of the Christian arena, I think that word makes people uncomfortable. You know, they're like, oh, why are you talking about like intimacy and your religion? Like that's weird. And so it is a little bit Christianese, but the reality is that sort of covenantal fellowship with Christ and recognizing that we are a counterpart to a king and that we are being prepared as a bride to rule and reign with him, and that all of this temporal stuff in this age and this life and all the ministries and flashpoint moments and all of that is just leading us into and growing us up into this counterpart, this equally yoked counterpart to Christ. And so we can either catch vision for that and then find endurance.
Yeah.
Or we can go, I just want a big ministry in this life and I want to make a bunch of money, or I want everybody to know my name, or I want to stand on a stadium stage. I've stood on a stadium stage. It's actually not that fun. Yeah. Like, I'm just being super honest. It's harder to engage your heart intimately with God on a stadium stage than it is in your living room.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, you know, we have these, especially young ones, they have this magical concept of like the big ministry moments. And I'm going to tell you that the difference between, you know, the difference in Lou's life, in Lou Engle's life, the difference in Mike Bickle's life, the difference in Alan Hood's life, the difference in Bill Johnson's life is that these men have caught vision for another age.
Yeah.
And they're driving their life into an eternal reality. And that is the sustaining difference for the human heart. And so all of it comes unto, am I investing in my temporal self, my self that's just going to, it's a fading flower, it's but a breath? Or am I investing in my eternal self?
Yeah.
And giving him that now? You know, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So the question of intimacy is always, where is your treasure?
Yeah.
What do you treasure?
So good. Francis Chan has a book called Marriage in the Light of Eternity. And it kind of sounds like what you're talking about. Hey, we're viewing our own lives even as the bride of Christ, right? We are viewing our marriage with him, you know, the upcoming wedding feast, even like we're on this side of eternity right now. And we're viewing, and we should be viewing our lives here in light of forever with him. Right. And I think putting endurance in that perspective, it changes the whole paradigm, because I think it's easy, at least for me, to think like, okay, I gotta endure just this next thing, or I gotta endure just this next thing. And we're like, well, I got the rest of my life ahead of me, and then eternity beyond that, you know. And we're just, it says this is eternal life, that we may know him. And so we've actually stepped into that now, and we get the opportunity of having, as our gaze is fixated on him, or having our mindset change, like, okay, we are viewing these light and momentary afflictions, as scripture calls them, and as such, because we're looking to eternity with him. Right. And I feel like this could be an entirely like separate podcast and interview, but like specifically the whole question of like endurance then in the midst of hardship and unmet or unfulfilled prophetic words over your life.
That's
and
a whole nother podcast.
Oh yeah, like they aren't coming in the timing I thought they were, you know. And so I know, I'm sure you guys have your whole, like the whole story just behind
yeah.
that. But I'm so grateful for your faithfulness and also perseverance and endurance through the exciting things, because you've genuinely been a part of so many exciting. You've been a part of the stage moments and also the behind the scenes RV moments as well with your family raising kids, and that I think Papa Lou uses the phrase obedience in a long direction is so. It is that gold that has been refined by fire, and so grateful to be able to have you on this this afternoon and be able to just even ask you a few questions and hopefully get to have you back on again at some point, maybe even Ryan as well. But for our listeners, if you guys actually want to go check out, it's ryanandninalandis.org. Is that correct? .com.
Yeah.
ryanandninalandis.com if you guys want to check out the Missional Nomads, want to check out their music as well. I think that's on your website. Highly encourage that. But if you have any other topics that you like to hear about, or if you have any questions maybe that you want to direct towards Nina, love if you guys want to post your comments below the video. Love to hear from you guys. But again, Nina, thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon. Yes. Graham for being here as well.
Thank you for a drink of living water.
Oh yes, that's good. Thank you guys.